Welcome to the Fine to Fab Show with Lisa Lieberman-Wang, helping women reclaim their inner peace and power, going from feeling fine to being fab, fabulous, awesome, beautiful, serving to empower you to break through the barriers that weigh you down, to live an authentic life that is healthy, happy, and free. Now, here's Lisa.
Welcome. I'm Lisa Lieberman-Wang, your trusted guide on your journey from feeling fine to being fab. So thank you for joining us today. I am very excited because we have an unbelievable show for you with somebody who I totally cherish and admire for his knowledge and experience and the wisdom you'll be getting today that you can apply to your life and your health and get immediate results. You know, one of the things about the show is that we come here every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and there's so many of you through social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, that we've been communicating at different levels. And if you're not part of that community, please join us on those social networks and follow me on Lisa Lieberman-Wang. Know that you can find out more of what's happening with the community by just texting the keyword FINE to FAB to 90210 and hit send. And there's so much more. Now, we're here live with Dr. Pieter DeWet, and we have so much incredible information. I was very blessed to have him as a guest almost over a month ago, and asked him to come back because I felt like it was a continuation that needed to have more information for all of us, as well as my curiosity and reading his books, which you'll find out about, has definitely been incredible. Dr. Pieter, you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you so much for having me. So glad to be here.
I'm excited that you're here. And I just want to tell some people a quick little background on you. But the more I read your books and everything else, the more I feel we can have a marathon. We'll start here for now. I mean, Dr. Pieter is a holistic medicine doctor over 25 years with integrative medicine, family practice, chronic disease management. The accolades for him: American Board of Holistic and Integrative Medicine since 2000, author of Heal Thyself, Transform Your Life, Transform Your Health, and Bringing Sexy Back, 2 different books you'll want to get a hold of. And he's just spent an incredible career in traditional medicine and also in integrative and holistic medicine. And I'm fascinated by the knowledge that you possess, Pieter, and how you're going to be able to change so many lives. And you've already done that with the information you share.
Well, thank you. You know, it's a calling, a mission. You know, one of the missions is to shift the paradigm, because we live in a country with a broken healthcare paradigm. You know, we treat symptoms, not causes. We have a a disease management system, not a healthcare system, as a lot of people think we have.
I agree. And what's happening is with the disease management, we just keep spending more and more money to something that we're looking for cures, and yet we're still sick and forever in looking for care and treating the symptoms, as you said before. So we're going to jump right in because there's so much information you have to share and a lot of questions I'll start with, but you can take us on any tangent you'd like. I'm totally open to it. You know, we talked about a lot of things from where our bodies are, the toxicity, the fact that, like you said, we're treating symptoms, not diseases, not causes. So why don't we start with the fact of where traditional medicine is, but we're going to go right to the fact of giving the information that we need to hear on what our alternatives are. A lot of people are still going to doctors looking for a pill or a solution for something, and really, in a lot of ways, hurting themselves more than helping themselves because they're masking what the real challenges are. So why don't we start there?
Well, you know, and the real concern, the real tragedy is that when we treat symptoms and not causes, we actually create more illness because we're defeating the body's natural defense mechanisms. You know, one of the themes in my book, Heal Thyself, is exactly that. There's a chapter in the book called The Anatomy of an Illness that actually walks you through, just some examples of symptoms that the body might kick in, that we might suffer from, and exactly what it is that the body's trying to do. And that's it's, there's a saying that, solutions are linked to the quality of the questions that we ask. So if we ask poor quality questions, we get poor solutions. But if we ask high quality questions, then often we can come up with superb solutions. That's the case with in healthcare. So when we have a symptom and we ask ourselves, what is the body trying to accomplish by activating that system, that organ that is bringing forth that symptom, then we can actually ask the second question is, how can we support the body to complete whatever it is that it's trying to achieve? So we learn that symptoms are actually the body's way of protecting itself and, clearing symptoms. By the way, I'm getting a little echo. I think that, it just went away, so that's good. That's the paradigm that I live by in managing disease. So in my clinic, which is an integrative medicine clinic, we actually do our very best to get to the bottom of things. So, when we look at illness, we look at it at 5 different levels, if we possibly can. Not always possible to access the highest levels, but again, in Heal Thyself, there's a chapter called The 5 Levels of Healing. So in that chapter, what I try to explain is that, if we want to cure a disease, instead of just treating, the symptoms, we have to figure out where the disease entered, at which one of the 5 levels the disease actually came in. So, for example, in most instances, a disease does not enter on the physical level, even though that's where we spend most of our time in conventional medicine treating them. So we might use drugs, we might use nutrients, we might use diet, exercise, structural work. Those are all very important, except the drugs, I would argue, with that one. I think we can do with a far less drugs than we are in our society. Occasionally it's necessary, to treat a crisis. But when we treat chronic illness with drugs, we get ourselves into very big trouble. But when we when we approach a disease just on a physical level, we're only temporizing. So inevitably, the moment we stop doing what we're doing, the disease comes right back, the symptoms come right back. So the second level is the energy body. So sometimes...
Well, let me just stop you there. And I do hear the echo, and I've just asked to see if we can get that addressed. But what do you mean by physical level?
Well, basically, on the physical level, as I said, that's where we're dealing with chemistry, biochemistry, structure, so that what we see in front of us, what we can sense with our 5 senses, in other words, so that's what we can touch, that's what we can smell, hear, taste, and so forth. So, for instance, a physical exam, most physicians go through the motions of doing a physical exam, which is often not very helpful and very often very cursory. At least it gives them an opportunity to touch the patient, which is always a good thing. I think, almost as good as a hug. But as I said, our ability to gather information from the person at that level is very, very limited. We might be able to get blood tests done. That's another example of, physical body, evaluation, to look at chemistries and all that. So again, at that level, we can do some really good work at managing symptoms, whether it's conventional or natural. Of course, I prefer natural because I think, that way we're actually supporting the body's healing mechanisms instead of defeating them. But I would much rather use an herbal combination to treat arthritis, for example, than, using anti-inflammatory painkillers and narcotics to try to achieve the same thing, because those 2 drugs, specifically, again, defeats, some of the the very defense mechanisms that the body kicks in, the healing mechanisms that the body kicks in to try and heal, for example, a joint. So that's that's basically the physical level. And Lisa, you know how important it is to eat correctly. You know, we do eat very poorly most of the time in this country, and that certainly adds to the the challenges that we're facing. But that doesn't happen in a vacuum either. You know, the food choices that we make are often made, in contrast to what we know and, what we believe. A lot of people act out against themselves and self-sabotage a lot, and that's where we have to enter the higher domains. We actually have to look at the mental body. We have to look at the energy body, and we have to look at the intuitive body and the spirit body, to figure out exactly why things happen the way they happen in the body. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because even against better judgment, I would laugh when someone would talk about taking an herb and say, well, it hurt me, but they'll eat a Twinkie that has all kinds of awful things in it and doesn't think, well, that hurt them. So, yeah, that goes just to the food level, but even to the point of, obviously, my forte is all about emotions, is how a lot of our emotions are the cause of the symptoms. So,
right. And, so when we go up to the next level, energy body, that's also very important for evaluation. In conventional medicine, we actually do a lot of evaluation at the energy body level. So we'll look at X-rays and MRIs and CAT scans and, EKGs and, look at the body from different angles there. But again, in conventional medicine, we very seldom use that level for treatment. And, in alternative or integrative medicine, we actually have all kinds of great therapies that work at that level. They do give us more traction, though, but again, they are not permanent solutions in most instances. So, you can go for acupuncture, that's addressing the energy body, or you can do Reiki massage, or healing touch, modalities like that. Those do make a big difference. But, usually not going to give you a permanent cure unless you go, a step higher than that. So again, when we look at the next body up, that's the mental body. So, that's my passion, is to try to understand, on an individual level with my patients, what it is that is happening that is causing the disease at that level. So my belief is that the vast majority of illness, is related to, stress or emotional conflict that's downloaded into the body, and that becomes, that's very specific for the emotion, and, goes to the very specific body part that's related to those emotions, or the story, you could say, behind the illness.
And why don't you give some examples of different body parts that get affected by that? Like if somebody's neck was an issue, what would we be attributing that to?
Well, we look at the structure that's affected. So if it's the spine, if it's the C-spine or cervical spine, for example, then we know that there are certain conflicts that program for disease in that area. And we can say in general that bone diseases, muscle diseases, and diseases of the fat tissue and the lymphatic tissue, those are all connected to devaluation conflicts. And by the way, when we listen to people talk, we often hear them use terms that reflect, some of what they might carry in an organ system. So the next time you hear somebody say that, I've got a pain, that situation or that person is a pain in the neck, you might ask them if they have neck problems, and if they're, in a relationship with that person, most likely they do, because, there's literally a physical manifestation, but the actual deeper underlying conflict is usually a conflict of devaluation. So, for instance, each vertebrae in the cervical spine carries a specific storyline. So at the very top of the C-spine, for instance, we'll often find that somebody has conflicts of unresolved anger and resentment, but they may also have a conflict of unresolved loss. So if somebody has died or passed, or they've left a relationship or they got divorced, and that wasn't completely processed, then it may go to that level. And it's absolutely fascinating because sometimes you can actually adjust somebody's neck, and I do this all the time in my office, where we'll literally just have them look right to the extreme, and then, while they're looking right, with their eyes turned sharply to the right, we'll actually have them do some affirmations or even a prayer to release unresolved resentments and to release unresolved losses, to heal that. And while they're looking and while they're turning the head, you'll actually see the neck loosen and go back into position. Same thing with the other side. So we'll do that. So that's part of the adjustment process that I do with patients when they come into me, with neck pain, for example. So, in just another set of examples, I wrote a book called Bringing Sexy Back, Transform the Body You Have into the Body You Want. Is the subtitle. And basically, the whole book is about metabolism. So it's broken metabolism, obesity, overweight, and all the diseases associated with, with obesity and with metabolic issues. It also paints a picture of the other extreme, which is anorexia. So it actually helps the reader to understand, that there's a lot of similarities between the two conditions, except they're extreme opposites on many levels. But the story, when we look at obesity, for example, we know that there's always one of 9 programs that underlie obesity. So when I see somebody with a weight issue, instead of just putting them on a diet and that I would deem appropriate for them based on their body, their blood type, their body type, their metabolic type, and so forth. Instead of just giving them rules and, making them feel deprived as they go home and try to institute, an eating plan that they're not used to and that they haven't bought into necessarily, what I also try to do is to help them to discover what it is that actually programmed for the condition. Because, you and I both know people that can eat all kinds of junk all day long and they never get fat.
Right.
You get other people that eat virtually nothing. And when you study them, you actually know that they're speaking the truth. And yet they have, a lot of extra weight on the body. So the metabolism is shut down. And again, the question is why? So there's lots of theories. And in conventional medicine, we like to blame genes. We say, well, it must be genetics. You were born that way. Well, I'm here to tell you, and, anybody that's smart knows that can't be true because, our society is getting fatter and fatter by the day. And if you go back 100 years, obesity was virtually unheard of. So something has shifted. And sure, there's, some things that we're doing with our diets that might be contributing to that. And there certainly is. But there's far more than that. We live in a much more stressful society. People are constantly burdened with, with unresolved conflicts in life. And by the way, when I say burdened, that gives you a little bit of a clue as to what some of those conflicts might be that, lead to overweight. But the bottom line is unless we address the emotional programming behind the obesity, we will never help somebody resolve their weight issues. And that's one of the reasons why we see such a huge failure rate in conventional medicine and even in natural medicine in addressing obesity. I don't know if you know this, Lisa, but if you take 100 people and you get them to lose weight, you actually are successful in getting them to lose weight. The percentage of people that actually keep that weight off, over 5 years is only 2%. It's only 2 out of 100.
And it's pretty scary too, because that's why they even say the weight loss business, it's not something that is consistent. Peter, would you just check if you have a speaker on or something? I've done everything on my side and Jessica is not responding to me here, so I don't know. Our engineer is not helping at this moment. So when I also had read too, I don't know if you saw this statistics, is that even with Nutrisystem, they said that this is awful. There was only 50% of the people that set out to lose weight. Most of the goals averaged about 40 pounds, and less than 50% of the people actually ever made it to pass the 20-pound mark before they went back. So even the 2% can seem high when you realize most people even never get to that goal.
Well, in Bringing Sexy Back, I tell many stories. So in each chapter, there's actually a testimonial from, one of my patients or their stories, to illustrate what they went through. These are all successful people that have lost weight, not just lost weight, but they've kept their weight off. And one of the stories is my own. So I relate in my story, some of the programs that launched in my life, certain events that took place, certain programs that I was born with, that my, thanks to my biogenealogy and, what I call the Project Purpose, which is the program that you get in the womb itself, from your parents, and that's not genetic, but epigenetic, so I relate my story, and you'll see that, for instance, when I went through my first divorce, when I went through a first broken relationship, my weight went up significantly. When I got married, I never had a weight problem at all until I got married. So, and guess what? That was, we have a lot of broken paradigm in our family related to marriage. Even though my parents stayed together, it was a little bit of a war zone, that we grew up in. So, getting married, was actually, major stress for me. So, and so on. I go through other examples of events in my life. I nearly drowned 3 times. So I didn't become overweight at that time, but later in my life, through time cycle, time cycle repeats, or repeating time cycles, congruent with the ages at which I was when I nearly drowned, I started also developing more central obesity, almost like my body was creating its own little flotation device, so not very cute. But
very visual, though. I got the visual.
Yeah. And, so again, I've got some other stories in there too. But I will tell you, in trying to lose weight, when I started trying to reverse my weight, my weight gain, my weight went up to 215 pounds, which was just immeasurably frustrating for me as a holistic physician, integrative physician, but I was dealing with stress that I wasn't clearing, I wasn't resolving. I hadn't gotten to the roots of those stressors. But when I did, almost magically, that weight started peeling off. But each time I reversed a certain conflict program, I would only get back to the weight that I was when the previous conflict had programmed. So for instance, I went from 215 and easily lost down to about 200, just right at 200, but I couldn't break through 200. So guess what? I had a program related to the number 200. So somehow psychologically, emotionally, when I broke through 200 and went up, that was a major defeat for me. And so when I came back down, my brain, my subconscious wanted to hold on to that 200 mark. It's almost like, the pink elephant in the room, or the elephant in the room, or, trying not to think of a pink elephant.
Right.
So as you get closer to a number that you carry a huge stress on, or that stressed you severely, there's a subconscious program that wants to hold on to that number, even though you're trying to break through that number. So, it's paradoxical, but it's also related to another conflict that we call the conflict of the mirror. So when you look in the mirror, what they've shown is that people that are overweight do not see themselves real accurately. So they don't have a, accurate perspective on how they look to other people. And sometimes that's one of the reasons why people that are overweight often don't like to have pictures taken of them, because the picture doesn't lie. So when they look at the picture, they actually see the real them, and their full glory, you could say, versus what they see in the mirror. So that's part of what we have to deal with if we want to be a 2%er, or if we want to expand that 2% success rate over 5 years and want to magnify it to more like, 90 or 100% of people being successful, with their metabolic rehab or their weight loss or whatever other goal they might have health-wise.
Okay, awesome. And what we're going to do is, Peter, we're going to come back and we're going to do a short break, go to a commercial, and when we come back, we'll talk about how to reset your metabolic levels, as well as really how to reprogram. I know a lot of people, I deal with it all the time when I'll speak to somebody and I'll ask them what their ideal weight is based on where they are, and I deal with a lot of disordered eating. And they'll always give me a number, and the irony about it is I ask, well, what was happening in your life at that number? Where did you get that number from? Because it's usually arbitrary. It's not even by a health scale or anything else, by their height or weight, what it would be healthy-wise. It's just a number that they equate to a time in their lives. So we're going to come back and revisit that. And everybody, you can call in if you'd like. You can Skype in at Women for Women Radio, W4WN Radio. And we will be right back. Stay tuned, and we'll have more of Dr. Pieter DeWet. Thank you.
If you've always wanted someone to connect with on your path to a happy, healthy you, I've got great news. In her #1 best-selling book, Find to Fab, 7 Secrets of a Successful Woman's Journey Away from Depression, Disordered Eating, and Self-Sabotage, Lisa Lieberman-Wang shares how you can experience your breakthrough just as she did. Start living an authentic life without blame, shame, or years of therapy. Buy now at findtofab.com.
Feeling tired and achy? Frustrated with allergies? Stress causing you high blood pressure? If you're ready to feel better, have more energy, maintain healthy cholesterol levels, joint flexibility and circulation, looking to reduce inflammation, support healthy glucose levels and sinus relief, plus so much more, Isotonics OPC3 is a food supplement made from a combination of bilberry, grapeseed, red wine, and pine bark extracts, and citrus extract bioflavonoids, all found to be powerful antioxidants. Oligomeric proanthocyanins, OPCs, are bioflavonoids found in fruit, vegetables, and certain tree barks that provide exceptional nutritional benefits to the human body. Studies have shown OPCs to be up to 20 times more powerful than vitamin C and 50 times more powerful than vitamin E in neutralizing free radicals. Isotonics is delivered in an isotonic solution, which means that the body has less work to do in obtaining maximum absorption, as you can drink your vitamins. No pills, binders, or fillers. Buy now at www.amillionproducts.com. Isotonics OPC3.
Now that I have your attention, ladies, when you need help breaking through the barriers that weigh you down, turning to food is not going to help, and starving yourself along with ongoing feelings of helplessness and frustration will not help either. The cycle of self-sabotage, disordered eating, and stinkin' thinking has to stop, and there is no better way than with other smart, business-savvy women like you who are making the change with best-selling author, licensed master NLP practitioner, and trusted guide, Lisa Lieberman-Wang of Find2Fab.com. Lisa will help you get that breakthrough you've been waiting for. Go to Find2Fabshow.com right now for all the details of the life-changing 10-week transformational program and the special listeners promotion. It's time to turn your life from feeling fine to being fab. Fabulous, awesome, beautiful. Go to Find2Fabshow.com now.
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Pieter DeWet, and we're speaking about, here we go, bringing sexy back as well as heal thyself, two of Dr. Peter's books that are incredible, you're going to want to get a hold of. And we were just talking about the fact of where obesity comes from, and also how we end up putting together this program that keeps us at certain weights and why we don't have our success. So, Dr. Pieter, I'm having a little technical challenge here, but hopefully yours is better. Why don't we continue where we left off in talking about, if we're setting these programs and not even knowing it, and we're hitting certain weight points and then we can't keep them, and how do we change this number?
Well, that's where the art of recall healing comes in. Recall meaning recalling the traumas or emotional or physical traumas that led to downloads, of disease programming into the tissue. So that's one of the modalities that I use. And every patient that I see in my clinic, we at least go on a brief journey to understand a little bit more about their programming, no matter what the illness or disease. And that applies, by the way, for acute and chronic illness. So somebody comes in with a cold, I'm just as interested to know, what the conflict was that occurred just before the cold than I am if somebody walks in, weighing 400 pounds and, having had no success in trying to stem the tide of increasing obesity. So what we do is, we always go back to the beginning, which you would think would be, a good idea. But, so what I always want to know is what happened just before someone got ill, and so, of course, it depends on whether they were born with it, because then we have to go back into the womb or the biogenealogy or both. But if it started occurring at a certain age, say in my case, I was about 23 years old when I, for the very first time, started having a little bump in my weight. And that was actually towards the end of medical school, and the pressures of, a career in medicine where I was going to have to carry other people's challenges. So, I'll take somebody back to the beginning, understand, their history, and we'll do that on every level up. So I'll ask my patient, for example, if they just had a smooth, gradual increase in weight, which is virtually never the case, or, it's more of a stair step. So I'll ask them each step up, so in my case, I went from, I think it was 152 pounds, to maybe 160 pounds. It's not any significant weight. I was still normal weight at that point, but there was a bump up, so if I had been smart at that time, I would have realized that, I was taking on severe stress related to, my career. Then my weight went from 160 to 168 when I got married the first time. So that shouldn't have been a surprise either. Then I moved to America from another country, took on the severe stress of, what I call the program of the refugee. I was in a different culture, different setting, and my weight went up to 176, so forth. So when I started reversing my weight, I had to bring up to consciousness, the program related. I had to ask myself the right questions. And then I had to, in recall healing, we say you name it, you claim it, and you dump it. And the dumping process is one of two things. You're either repairing or you're reframing an event or a stress or a conflict. So a repair would look something like this. So you're in a troubled marriage, troubled relationship. If you go for counseling and you have a partner that is willing to go with you and you can repair the relationship, then that's going to help you with your weight. That's going to help you with your health. On the other hand, if you don't have a willing partner and, you can choose another repair. You may separate. You may get divorced. But if that is not an option that you want to consider, then your other option is to massively reframe, is to find an empowering way to look at the same situation, the same stress, or the same event that occurred to you, and to do a reframe in that way. So we actually have a series of tools that we teach people, and one of them is a beautiful one that Lisa, that you might be familiar with, and that's EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. That's just tapping and reprogramming through, acupuncture or acupressure type tapping process combined with, reframing, verbal reframing, a specific situation. So there's, even prayer can be used as a tool, as a magnificent tool, if you're a believer, to clear some of the programming that comes up. The problem with prayer, just like with everything else, is when you don't have a clue what you're dealing with, and you don't even understand, what it is that you've downloaded, it's hard to pray on it and to make it go away. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's you're shooting out to space. There's nothing specific to catch on to.
Right. So, and this is not negating the other tools, So just like there's programming for your specific weights or whatever, your metabolism is doing, there's also programming behind the eating habits. So we say, one of the things that I'm interested to know in my patients struggling with the weight is, what their food addictions are. What are they? Because you're in somebody that's overweight, you're always going to find that even if they don't eat very much, the food choices that they make are usually very, very counterproductive to them trying to lose weight. So, for instance, if you are addicted to wheat and grains in general, we know that that addiction is related typically to a conflict related to a separation from father. It could be real, symbolic, imaginary, or virtual. So it's not always that your father abandoned you physically, but it may be an emotional abandonment. It may be that your father worked all the time and never was home to be there for you. It may be a stress in the marriage between your father and your mother, or the relationship between your father and mother. There are many different ways that can occur, but we always find a story, related to father when somebody has a wheat or a grain addiction. On the other hand, if it's dairy addiction, we know that there's always a conflict program related to mother. So again, the brain always deals with things in the most anatomically real way that it can.
You're making me laugh here because I'm looking and I'm going, I have a dairy and wheat challenge.
Oh, that tells us a lot about you, doesn't it?
And I have some of I think part of my family's listening. This will be fun.
Well, that's why we teach people to do one of the most powerful releases, most powerful healings possible is called Ho'oponopono. Spelled Ho'oponopono. It's a Hawaiian healing ceremony, which is based on 4 statements that you make to anybody in this world that you carry energy on. And when you make those 4 statements, you're basically releasing yourself and you're releasing them. And those statements, number 1 is, I'm sorry. Now, these are, as crazy as this sounds, but even a baby coming into this world is a villain in some ways. If you think about the stress that a baby puts their parents through, the changes in their lives and, the upheavals, the stress related to money, the stress related to, accommodations, living arrangements, all kinds of things, careers, that brings stress. So, no, the baby is not on purpose trying to torment the parent or parents, but that happens just by natural, the way things come together. Yeah. So when that child grows up, and there's a strain in the relationship between them and the parent at some level, or some unresolved conflict, some hurt that hasn't been resolved, we can truly say, in that situation, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my dear parents, for all the crap that I put you through, all the stress that you had to go through, to provide for me, and to give me life, to bring me into this world. Thank you for choosing, number 1, for bringing me into this world and not aborting me, and so forth. And then you say, please forgive me. Please forgive me for the judgments that I've held against you. This is just an example, by the way, and not, the entirety of it. But please forgive me for the anger, resentment, whatever, negative emotions, guilt, shame, whatever it is that I've carried towards you, and then you say, thank you. Thank you for being my parents. Thank you for being there for me. And thank you for loving me into this world. Even if your parents didn't want you, even if your parents went through an entire pregnancy and didn't want anything to do with you, that they still brought you into this world. They didn't terminate the pregnancy. They, still gave you opportunity. As we know, with so many stories, that there's extraordinary successful and happy and fulfilled people in this world that started with the most abominable circumstances, with a really, really hard start in life. And then we can say at the end of that, I love you. So I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And that statement of I love you is unconditional love. It's not because they did something. It's not because they were perfect parents. It wasn't, or, whoever it is that you're in relationship with that you've been traumatized by. It's just a statement, it's a God statement, because God is love. That's what your deepest essence is, your divine essence, as I call it. So, that's that 4-part statement is hugely powerful in healing some of those wounds, related to our relationships, the stuff that we carry. But it does help, by the way, to get very specific about the story. So when we do recall healing, we'll often go into the womb. We'll try to discover, through the history of others, because of course you wouldn't remember, you wouldn't know, but your parents do, sometimes aunts and uncles do, grandparents, whatever. You can, whoever you can get that history from, you can ask. So getting real specific about the traumas that happened while you were in the womb, or at the moment of conception, or the moment of birth, in the delivery room, the first year of life, and even the 9 months before conception. That's all part of the funnel, called the Project Purpose, which literally lays down the purpose of your life, the project. So we all have a project that we're not aware of, and that we play out every single day of our existence. And some of our projects are pretty screwed up. We don't even know or realize that. And so bringing all of that to awareness is so powerful. And then the third element is literally going back and looking at the biogenealogy. Again, that's stuff that you have to get from family members oftentimes, but there's always stories in the family, and what we call family curses, family traumas, losses that have not, were never properly, handled or properly cleared or resolved, or people that were banished from the family. So rejection often comes into play. So all of that also plays a huge role. If somebody was molested, if somebody was raped, if somebody was killed, died unexpectedly, even the way of death. If somebody was stabbed in the abdomen in a previous generation, you might be born with a predisposition towards abdominal pain in a very specific area. So, those are just examples of what we see, the stories behind the scenes that help us to reprogram, to help people to reprogram right from the core up and to literally release their disease-forming programming.
What happens, or what's the differential from someone who creates a story that obviously we know, the map is not the territory, and the story can just be the interpretation of what they think happened? How does that, because I could see it muddling and making this gray where somebody might turn around and say, well, this is part of the precursor that put you where it is, and give them an answer to something that may not even be a problem or create one.
Well, the body reflects what you carry. So every disease, every tissue, every psychological, psychiatric illness or disease or condition, every learning disorder, every personality trait that you have, it's all programmed. So, there's a story, and if the story resonates, if you hit the right story, then magic happens. Then the problem tends to resolve. At least 50 to 60% of the time, when the story is brought back to consciousness without even having to do a repair, the disease process or the condition disappears, melts away. Some people call that miracles, or magic. 40%, 50% of the time, you still have to do some repair. You might have to do what I just mentioned, one of the tools being Ho'oponopono, or EFT, or you might have to, there's lots of tools, you can do hypnosis, for example. You might go through, you might even have to have a physical repair in some instances. So, for instance, when somebody's diagnosed with cancer, there's not only did they have a conflict program that programmed for the cancer, but now, after the diagnosis is made and announced, they now have what I call the conflict of the diagnosis-prognosis. So there's a massive shock to the system, especially when you're diagnosed with a so-called incurable disease. So when somebody's told, well, sorry to tell you this, but you have pancreatic cancer, and you know by history and by, the stories of others that it's virtually always incurable, that's like a condemnation, like somebody has just spoken death over you, and so it's very, very hard to turn that around. So in those circumstances, sometimes you need the conventional chemo, radiation, surgery, whatever you need, to just deal with the mental, emotional part of the conflict, not just the physical part. On the other hand, if somebody's very, very clear and very strong emotionally, mentally, they may just go back, figure out what the program is, resolve that, and have the cancer disappear. We've seen cases like that. And, in the work that was originally done on recall healing, what was originally called, Germanic New Medicine or German New Medicine, and Dr. Reiki Hammer, the originator of this art, of this particular form of medicine, studied 40,000 cases of cancer and showed that every one of them had a story, had a program, and in which, when they resolved that story, cleared that story, the disease cleared in 92% of those patients without any other treatments. He should have gotten a Nobel Prize for that work. But unfortunately, instead, what the conventional medical community has done is to massively suppress, the work of Dr. Hammer and others that have come after him, like Dr. Claude Sabah. I mentioned these great, men in my book, Heal Thyself, and the story behind the science of recall healing, and how it came about and how exactly it works.
And it's so fascinating. What I'd love to do at this time, because as last time our time went very quickly, would be just to let people know how to find you and how to get your books so that they can continue on this journey to health. Well,
the clinic that I'm connected with and that I own is called QHI Wellness, which stands for Quantum Healing Institute. And if you want to contact us, you can go to our website at qhiwellness.com for more information on us, or you can go to shopqhi.com for copies of my books. You can also get my books on Amazon.com and BarnesandNobles.com. And you can also call us at 903-939-2069, 903-939-2069. That is our number. You're in Tyler, Texas, where we're located, the beautiful piney woods of East Texas. I'll mention a couple of other resources. There's a book by my mentor, Dr. Gilbert Renaud. It's called Recall Healing, Pyramid of Health, and it's basically an encyclopedia of all diseases and the exact program behind each one of those diseases. So literally like a Bible, that you can go into reference and look up your condition, whatever it is that you're dealing with. And then we have a series of DVDs available also on recall healing, including obesity and eating disorders and a variety of other health challenges. And then also just the basics on recall healing, level 1, level 2, and level 3.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pieter. You're incredible, and I appreciate you being here and sharing all this information with us. For all of our listeners, I just want to say, remember, you're fabulous, awesome, beautiful. Join us every Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time, for the Find to Fab show, and have an outstanding day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Tell me if this sounds like you. You're a woman, you're successful but aren't quite comfortable with yourself. Perhaps you struggle with depression, eating disorders, or some form of self-sabotage. You've tried diets and programs, self-help, psychiatrists, even Overeaters Anonymous, and you're still looking for the answer. Well, get your answer today. Go to findtofabshow.com. That's FINETOFAB show.com.